It started on a warm Saturday morning in late spring, when the air smelled faintly of cut grass and the sound of sprinklers clicking filled the neighborhood. I was sitting on the porch, sipping coffee from my favorite chipped mug, enjoying the quiet before the day got busy. We had moved into this house less than a year ago, finally escaping the cramped apartment life for a small home with a yard big enough for our dog to run around. My wife, Claire, had been away for months on deployment with the Navy, and she was due back in just a few days. I had been counting down the hours. But that morning, instead of the peaceful weekend I'd planned, I saw a group of people walking toward my driveway. They were dressed in matching polo shirts with an embroidered logo I recognized. The HOA board. 3 of them stood in a row, like a firing squad, with clipboards in hand and an air of authority that didn't match the fact they were just neighbors. The one in the middle, a tall woman with severe glasses and a frozen smile, stepped forward. "Mr. Thompson," she said in a tone that sounded friendly but wasn't, "we need to talk about your property." I put my coffee down, already feeling the knot in my stomach tighten. I knew from the start they weren't here for a casual chat. "What's the problem?" I asked. She glanced at her clipboard like it was a sacred text. "We've received multiple complaints about your yard not meeting HOA standards. The grass in your side yard is 2 inches too long. Your trash bins were visible from the street last Thursday. And your porch furniture, well, let's just say it doesn't fit the neighborhood's approved aesthetic." I blinked at her, wondering if she could hear how ridiculous she sounded. So what? I can fix the grass and move the bins. No big deal. But she smiled wider, the kind of smile that means bad news. "Unfortunately, this isn't just about that. You've had 3 violations in the past 6 months. According to our bylaws, that means you are subject to fines and potential removal from the community if the board votes in favor." I stared at her, shocked. "Removal from the community? You're saying you can kick us out because my grass is too long?" The man on her left, short and red-faced, spoke up for the first time. "Rules are rules, Mr. Thompson. You signed the agreement when you moved in." I felt heat rising in my chest. "We bought this house with our own money. You can't just push us out like that." But they didn't seem interested in debating. They handed me a yellow envelope and turned to leave. Inside was a formal notice. A hearing would be held in 1 week, and the HOA would decide whether to initiate eviction proceedings. My hands trembled as I read it. The unfairness hit me like a punch. Claire wasn't even home to help deal with this. She didn't know anything about the past months of small battles, letters about the wrong color of our mailbox, warnings for parking on the street for more than 2 hours, nitpicking over harmless things. It was like they were looking for reasons to get rid of us. And now, it seemed, they had found their chance. The next few days were a blur of frustration and late-night research. I pored over HOA bylaws, state housing laws, anything I could find that might give us some defense. I called a lawyer friend who told me the HOA's power was strong in this state, especially when rules were written into the purchase agreement. Unless we could prove they were targeting us unfairly, it would be hard to win. I didn't tell Claire over the phone. I didn't want her to worry before she came home. But each time I thought about her coming back to a notice saying we were losing the house we had dreamed of, my stomach turned. On Thursday evening, I heard a knock on the door. It wasn't the HOA this time. It was my neighbor, Sam. He was a retired mechanic with grease-stained hands and a gruff but kind manner. "I heard what they're trying to do to you," he said. "They've pulled this before. The family, 2 streets over, gone in less than a month after a hearing. They want control, and anyone who doesn't play their game gets run out." His words made my heart sink further. He offered to speak on my behalf at the hearing, but I wasn't sure it would matter. The board already seemed to have made up their minds. When Saturday finally came, I went to the airport to pick up Claire. I had rehearsed how I would tell her about the mess we were in, but when she walked through the terminal in her crisp Navy uniform, duffel bag slung over one shoulder, all I could do was hug her and hold on. She felt the tension in me immediately. "What happened?" she asked. On the drive home, I told her everything. I expected her to be furious, but she listened quietly, her eyes narrowing in thought. "So they think they can just push us out because they don't like us?" she said, slowly. "That's what it looks like," I replied. That night, she sat at the dining table with the yellow envelope, reading every word of the notice and the bylaws I had printed. Then she looked up at me with a small, sharp smile I hadn't seen in months. "We're not just going to fight this," she said. "We're going to make sure they regret trying." The morning of the hearing came faster than I expected. The entire week had been a mix of anxiety and quiet preparation. Claire had spent hours on the phone in the evenings talking to people I didn't know. She didn't tell me exactly what she was doing, only that she had a plan. I trusted her, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the HOA wouldn't back down easily. These people weren't just enforcing rules, they enjoyed the control. The hearing was scheduled for 6 p.m. in the HOA Community Center, which was basically a small building near the pool. I'd been in there before for barbecues and a holiday gathering, but tonight it felt like enemy territory. Claire insisted we arrive a little early. She wore her full navy dress uniform. The sight of her in that dark blue jacket with gold buttons, the ribbons perfectly lined across her chest, the shining black shoes, and the crisp white cover hat made me pause in awe. She looked like authority itself. "Are you sure you want to wear that?" I asked as we got out of the car. "Absolutely," she said. "They need to remember who they're talking to." Inside, the board members were already gathered at a long table, papers spread out in neat stacks. The tall woman with the severe glasses, her name was Linda, I'd learned, spotted us first. Her eyes flicked over Claire's uniform, and, for a split second, her confident expression faltered, but she quickly put on a polite smile. "Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Thompson," she said, nodding to each of us. "Please take a seat. We'll begin shortly." The room had about 10 folding chairs for residents to watch the proceedings, and a few neighbors had come. I saw Sam in the back, arms crossed, ready to support us. The meeting began with Linda reading off the list of our supposed violations. She spoke in a slow, deliberate tone, as though she was reading a criminal indictment. Violation 1. Failure to maintain grass height within the HOA's approved length. Violation 2. Improper storage of waste containers visible from the street. Violation 3. Porch furniture not in compliance with neighborhood standards. She laid the papers down with a little flourish, like she was presenting irrefutable evidence. These repeated violations within a 6-month period constitute grounds for removal from the community under Section 14, Paragraph C of the HOA bylaws. I started to speak, but Claire put a hand on my arm. She stood up slowly, adjusting the sleeves of her uniform and stepped forward. Her voice was calm but carried across the room without effort. "I've reviewed the bylaws," she began. "And while they do allow for removal under repeated violations, they also state that enforcement must be fair and consistent across all residents. That's Section 3, Paragraph B." Linda shifted uncomfortably. Claire continued, "In the past month, I have walked through this neighborhood and documented multiple homes with grass exceeding the height limit, trash bins visible from the street, and porch furniture that does not match the approved list. I have photographs of each instance." She reached into her folder and laid several sheets of glossy photos on the table in front of the board. The short, red-faced man glanced at them and muttered, "That's irrelevant. We're talking about your property, not others." Claire didn't even blink. "It's entirely relevant if you're enforcing rules selectively. Selective enforcement is discrimination, and in this state that's illegal. It opens the HOA to legal action." There was a rustle among the neighbors, sitting in the back, whispers passing quickly. Sam smirked. Linda tried to regain control. "Mrs. Thompson, these are standard community rules. We treat everyone equally." Claire leaned forward slightly, her voice lowering but gaining weight. Then you won't mind if we request the violation records for every homeowner over the past 2 years. I'm sure you keep those, right? After all, transparency is important for a fair board." The silence in the room was thick. The board members exchanged glances. Finally, Linda said, "That information is private." Claire's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Not when it's being used to justify removing someone from their home. As a service member, I take oaths. Seriously, one of those oaths is to protect people's rights, and right now, you're violating ours." Her words had weight, not just because of the uniform, but because she spoke with the authority of someone who had been in situations far more intense than this small-town power play. The tension was broken only when Sam raised his hand from the back. "I'd like to speak," he said. "I've lived here for 20 years. These folks have done nothing wrong that I haven't seen a dozen others do." Standing, calm, her hands clasped behind her back in that military posture that says, "I'm not moving." She wasn't just defending our home. She was making the board think twice about ever trying something like this again. After a long pause, Linda cleared her throat. "We will need to review this matter further before making any decision," she said, her voice tighter now. "This meeting is adjourned." She banged a small wooden gavel on the table, but it didn't sound nearly as decisive as she probably wanted. We walked out into the cool evening air. Claire took my hand. "That's round one," she said quietly. "But they're not done yet. And neither are we." The next morning, I woke up to the sound of our dog barking at the front window. When I looked outside, I saw a pickup truck with the HOA's logo idling near the curb. 2 men in polo shirts were walking around our property with clipboards, snapping pictures of everything: the driveway, the side fence, even the flower pots on the porch. I stepped outside, still in my t-shirt and pajama pants. "Can I help you?" I called out. One of them didn't even look at me. The other said, flatly, "Routine inspection." Then they got back in the truck and drove off without another word.
They will try to push you down. They will try to silence you. But the truth can never be buried. Here, every story has its own strength. Every voice has its own identity, and no stand is ever forgotten. Subscribe to QZ Stories, where silence breaks and the truth walks without fear.